Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And it's finally a perfect week almost. I don't care about anything else, Matt, but my man, Tom Brady, is back. And, I mean, what does that say about his wife? He only lasted, a month and a half at home with the family?
He drove the kids to school a couple times, like, yeah, screw this.
But I have a feeling that he was always coming back, and I wonder if it was kind of like a shot at Jimmy Garoppolo. Because remember, everyone tried to make it about, who did they say? Like, they tried to twist it around, like, the narrative, saying, like, oh, Tom Brady was actually talking about so-and-so team with his, like, they went with that guy? When everyone knew it was the 49ers and Garoppolo, and then Garoppolo was like rumored to be a strong push for Tampa Bay, and like Tom Brady's like, no, I'm coming back. I don't want that guy anywhere near my team that I helped build, which he did. Let's be honest. He brought a lot of guys in and kind of shifted their mindset and made them winners, right? So that's my take on it. I think that he had a good feeling that Garoppolo was going to be the guy there. And he's like, no way. I'm coming back. I didn't even really want to retire in the first place because he did say he was going to play. A few years ago, he said he was going to play. This would be his last year, this next upcoming one. So for him to retire a year early, it's kind of like whatever. But he has to also think, too, like the team was so injured this year, and they still almost went on the run to the Super Bowl. Like, that's how close they actually were. Like, they came back against the Rams, and they played them more competitively than other teams did. So the fact that he's able to do that with an injured squad makes me think that he knows that they have a legitimate chance to come back. Didn't they sign Russell Gage? Or which receiver did they sign? Wasn't that who it was? From the Falcons?
Might have been.
Let's look it up. Yeah, Russell Gage. He was like the third receiver from the Falcons, which this offseason is kind of like very strange. I guess Gage would have been the second one right after Julio left, but their offense has been so bad to watch that like it kind of just like toned them out. Where now the Falcons, like, you're letting him go. You lost Julio. Your other star receiver is out on gambling charges. Like, he's out for the year. Who's Matt Ryan throwing to? Right?
He is only throwing to Kyle Pitts.
I only knew Gage because I always would pick him up in fantasy because he was always available, and he was always like a crapshoot where it could be 0 points, or sometimes he could catch a touchdown and get like 15 points, and it's like, all right, that's a good pickup. But then you're always like, I got to get rid of him. I can't have him on my bench because I might want to put him in, you know? So he's one of those guys. And my other guy like that, Christian Kirk, which, did you see his signing? Because unbelievable. 100% not worth it. Like, nothing against the guy. I loved him on my team last year, but he's not the type of guy that can just blow open the game, right? How many weapons did they have on that Cardinals team? And he was still like their third receiver. Like, he wasn't, I mean, he was their deep threat. He turned into it. But, like, if you're the Jets, what makes you think, you know what we need? To overpay for a deep threat. That's basically all we need on this team. So, Jets fans, I apologize. I would be, seeing the signing, I don't even know if I would be getting excited at that point. Where you're like, let's look at all of our issues. And then it's not even like a top tier wide receiver. And then it kind of screws my Packers, Matt, with Devontae Adams now. Because he has to see that money and is like, okay, well, I'm definitely not going to be franchise tagged now. And then, does he come back? Because I don't know how it works with the cap space on just getting him back. I don't agree with the narrative that the Packers need him back to be competitive. I think Aaron Rodgers is able to do that on his own. I don't know if it's going to be Super Bowl contender worthy because that also stopped with Aaron Rodgers and how he kind of has clammed up in the playoffs the last couple of years. Having Adams on that squad doesn't change a thing because I'm still a little bit gun shy on him because of all the drops he had like a couple years ago when he first came into the league, where that was like kind of setting him up. And it's kind of like, all right, well, what if he goes back to that? What if he goes back to having big issues? But that's not even. Did Juju end up signing? There's been so many wide receivers moving around that I'm kind of like a little bit weary of making big predictions so far. But what did you see so far that stood out in the free agency period?
How aggressive Jacksonville has been. And I know that they had the cap space, but I feel like they've been making an aggressive push to try to immediately get better. Like I feel like they've upgraded a couple different areas, and granted they had a lot of areas that they needed to address. But I thought that it was interesting to see, like for as bad of a team as they had last year in the early part of the year, that they're trying to be more competitive.
Well, I messed up. I said the Jets. I meant the Jags, where they signed Kirk, and it's like their offense. Who did they even have? And then they let Carlos Hyde go too. And so you're bringing in a deep threat when who else are you throwing to with Trevor Lawrence? I don't think if you looked at that team and you were like, hey, what do we need? A deep threat. So all my other comments still stand. I just had the team wrong. I don't know why I thought that. It was the Jets, probably because they are a piece of shit too. Like Jets, Jags. It's like, oh, bottom feeders. I was probably a little bit biased because my man Urban Meyer, I thought he'd be a little bit better. So I was thinking like, what bottom feeding team did he sign with that starts with a J? They must mean the Jets. But I was wrong in my memory. But yeah, you're right. They are signing a ton of people, but you're spending so much. Why? Like, did they not see how the Chiefs did it? Where you already had the young quarterback. Get him some young, dynamic talent. They're basically saying that Kirk is going to be Hill for the Chiefs. And I don't think that's the case. So, and I mean, like I said, I like him as a player. If you follow fantasy, that kind of just shows you the value of players. He's always available on the free agent wire. And we have 14 teams in the league or something like that. So if he's in our deep league, if he's available and in pretty much every other league. He's my guy that I don't draft and then I pick up later in the season when all my other guys are injured. And I'm like, hey, I bet Kirk's still out there because the Cardinals barely throw to him. And then whenever their guy went down, Hopkins, then he started to get picked up, and then now the Jags overpaid for him, and it's just crazy. Everyone's talking about it. I don't know how much else he's able to they're able to fit in under the cap or whatever, but $84 million is the total. So just getting that for only a 4-year deal, crazy to me. I also skipped over you. What do you think about Tom Brady coming back?
I don't really have anything to comment on. I mean, to me, the big thing is all of that Tampa team after he retired pretty much went their separate ways, and I felt like he was kind of exposed towards the end of the year with teams getting the pass rush to him, that a lot of that offensive line has disappeared. And I thought it was interesting that there's a possibility that New England's going to be trading an offensive lineman to the Bucs, or that Belichick was willing to work with them to trade linemen down there. But there's a lot of linemen that are going to be missing, and just holes in general. Gronkowski said he was back out once Brady left. So does he come back?
Well, see, I wonder if he kind of stepped away to let them fill those holes, because I mean it looks like they got Shaq Mason from the Giants, right? Is that where he was
from? That was from New England.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I don't know what I'm thinking. So they got him, and then and they only give up a draft pick for him. So what else are they able to do movement-wise? You got to think that I don't think they lost any of their big receivers, right? They're able to bring in Gage. I wonder if Tom Brady can redo his deal. Let's see. They tried to bring in other veterans late in the season for that playoff run when everyone else was injured. And so I almost wonder, didn't they lose a linebacker? I could be wrong on that. because like I'm having an awful show remembering teams right now. But I will say that if he's going to be the guy coming back, he's not going to come back unless he thinks that they have a good enough chance to win it. And I haven't seen enough changeover from them where I'm really worried about that. Remember, he took over the team that had a history of not even making the playoffs, and he was able to turn it into a Super Bowl winning team, and one that was also in the running this past year. So as long as he's able to get a team together, and I think he knows how to build it so that they can win and get ready and compete for playoffs. It doesn't matter how many losses they have in the regular season, which people forget, and they were knocking him for last year. And it's like, all right, well, at some point, you need to just be able to gel late in the season. So it'll be curious to see what they end up doing. And, I mean, like I said, that sparked a big movement and a pushback because, like, they were on the brink of getting Garoppolo. Now, what other quarterbacks have moved? Rumors out of Carolina here is that Deshaun Watson favors the Panthers, and they're making a clear, like, push to get him. And they were rumored to get him before. If you're him, though, and the vote of confidence they gave Matt Rule, it's like, why would I go there? The other team that he's interested in, and apparently there's only 2 that he is allowing right now for trade requests, are the Saints. So what does that do with your boy Jameis and his availability in the free agent market or whatever? What do you think?
Well, I was really hoping that he was going to sign with Pittsburgh, and I don't know. I think
he still could.
I think that with their other deal, I think that ship's kind of sailed.
Well, we can go ahead and move because I put it as a topic. I figured it was going to be kind of tied into this big free agent talk with Tom Brady. They signed Mitch Trubisky, and I'll be honest, he's the same as Mason Rudolph to me. People have been texting me saying, like, no, he's better. Like, you're wrong. And I'm like, I just don't see it to me. On the show, I said, look, I've watched him play down here. I live in ACC country. The Bears, awful draft pick. What are you doing? You traded up for him at number 2. I said he was going to be a bust. I didn't even know that he landed with the Bills last year and played like garbage time or whatever. He never heard about him. He didn't push for the starting job. He did nothing. He was basically a backup. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, Chad Henne's been a backup for how many years, Matt? People don't even know he's still in the league. And he's still, I think he's playing this year, or this coming year. Maybe I'm wrong, but you can make that your career. I mean, as a number 2 pick, it's a little bit harder because it does not affect your veteran salary, which is why I don't think you see so many high draft picks. Like even Cam Newton struggled to find a suitor last year. And guys that are just fitting in that veteran mold that have never really been the guy. I think that's why you see so many players out there, just because of the collective bargaining that are older, that have never really been the starter, that kind of stuck around. Think of Charlie Batch. I mean, he was a starter for a bit, right, with the Lions?
Yeah.
And then he ended up just going in. Same with like Byron Leftwich. The Steelers got him late, and now like he just kind of rode the path of, hey, I don't think I was like a number 1 draft pick, but I played, and now let's just make me the backup. Like Mitch Trubisky, the number 1 thing that the knock on him is that he wasn't 2 overall. So like he's coming in to compete. Same with Haskins. So they have what, a number 1 draft pick, a number 2 draft pick, and then their guy Rudolph. And they said they're going to bring in 1 more. So if they brought in Jameis, dude, I would just be laughing. But I think Jameis is going to be worth too much money after the way he played last year.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. And I mean, to me, the thing with Trubisky that I think, and it still rings true from when we had our draft talk with him. When he came out of North Carolina, he's coming from Fedora's like spread style offense, that it was, are you going to cater some of this to his strengths? Like if you build it around going in saying we're going to run some of this stuff to play to his strength, which I think him coming in with Matt Canada and saying we're going to build around Harris, we're going to be a run team, and off of that we're going to build in the play action passing and things like that, then absolutely it makes sense to bring someone like him in that's actually mobile. And I think that one of the things with when you watched last year with Ben was he was just a straight drop back passer. And so the issue with that is if you know where Ben's going to be every single time, you can just tee off on him. And that's exactly what you saw happen time and time again, was that guys could just come. And if they didn't bounce off him and he scramble around, he was going down.
And I'll say this. I brought up the stats for him, and my number one knock on him going back to the draft is that, let's be honest, he played in the weak side of the ACC, and the schedule was not good at all. And whenever he played like a decent defense, he played like garbage. Like they won. Like looking at the schedule, they played, I would say, possibly 4 or 5 tough teams. It depends on how you feel about Florida State and Pitt back in the day. This was 2016, right? So Florida State was a tough team. Weren't they like the top? They beat them by 1. That was basically a show out. Or was that after the Orange Bowl year? I can't remember. So maybe they weren't that good that year.
That might have been the Orange Bowl year that you blocked it out.
Well, no, didn't know if that was the year or if it was the year after that. We'll look that up real quick because that's a big thing. That was the game that really came out to him. He threw 5 touchdowns against them, and they won by 1 point. The other tough teams they played, they all lost. Georgia lost. Virginia Tech lost. NC State lost. They did beat Pitt by 1. Or no, they beat Florida State by 2, Pitt by 1. They also lost to Duke. And in the games that they lost, he didn't play well. Like Virginia Tech, his quarterback rating was 42. He had no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Georgia, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but his yards per attempt, Matt, 3.9. Same with like his against Virginia Tech, 1.8. So he wasn't throwing the ball downfield. He was just dinking and dunking it. And then everyone was like, yeah, look at his stats. And I'm like, yeah, he's beating up on a bunch of Rutgers. Like, it would be like if the Big Ten decided, you know what, we got to move Rutgers and Maryland to the West, and they got to play. Because, like, I named their teams. They played Citadel, Miami, Virginia, like, JMU. They also did play Illinois, and they beat them. But Illinois sucks. Like, let's be honest. Let's see. No, that was not the Orange Bowl year, was it? Or maybe it was. Yeah, it was. They lost to the North Carolina, Louisville, and Clemson, that Florida State team. So that was basically his game.
That was at the end of the game, though. They lost that. That was on the last second field goal.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm going to say. Like, that's the one that was his coming out party, was that one game. But 1 out of 5, right? Because I thought I was remembering that right. Like, the Florida State game was like his Heisman moment outside of, not making a Heisman. That one really put him over the top. But most of his passing stats came against like JMU. And it's like, all right, of course you're gonna throw for 400 and something yards against JMU. So I don't know. I wasn't high on him then. I think if you go back and watch the tape, of course you're gonna run. It was kind of like Denard Robinson. Remember him from Michigan? He always had the September Heisman because that early schedule, he would tear through it, get banged up, and then slow down a bit. And when the Big Ten schedule showed up, then he kind of just like faded down the stretch. But he was always good for a September win over Notre Dame and then whatever else. So that's like how it is for like Trubisky. It's like, hey, although he didn't run as much, so he was able to spread it out, and they played Citadel or JMU late in the year. So I just don't see, like, you're coming into Pittsburgh. He said that he's relearned the game at Buffalo, where now he's not just thinking about what he's doing. He's going to play by feel. And I'm like, I don't even know what that's going to do. What does that mean? You're going to feel a bunch of dink and dunks? Because you're not going to be like the guys that, and they talk about like, oh, he has a big, strong arm, but like, you have to be a guy that can read and make those throws and at least buy yourself some time. Where I thought the Bears had some chances, like when he first came into the league, they had some weapons. And they were like never being used, right? So it's like, all right, how much of that is Trubisky not seeing the reads and not making a play? And is that going to be a Ben Roethlisberger type move? Because no, that's what Mason Rudolph doesn't do. So him coming in doing the same exact stuff as Mason Rudolph, but I don't know what his salary is, but a potential more expensive Mason Rudolph. Why? At that point, I'm kind of disappointed they didn't get Garoppolo. If they would have just waited, because did Tom come back first? I can't remember the timeline. If Tom came back or if Trubisky signed first. But if they would have just waited, Matt, let it play it out. Don't get too anxious. See if you can get Garoppolo. Or hell, see if you can get Deshaun Watson. Like, if he's cleared, and I think all the legal stuff's dropped, get him. What's the difference? I mean, I know he played at Clemson, so if Carolina can get him, maybe that will get a lot of those fans down in that area to kind of really buy into the Panthers, but I don't know. Any other thoughts on him?
I want to see what else they're planning on doing, because if they actually make some kind of legitimate push to try to pick up like a Malik Willis in the draft, because if you sign Trubisky and you're using him as your 2, knowing that Mason Rudolph at best is backup garbage time, then you've upgraded your backup quarterback, knowing that you have 2 veterans in the room to groom whichever rookie quarterback. And even if they don't go with Willis, I can see them still drafting any of the other quarterbacks that are available when they pick. So they'll have what, 3 currently? They'll be looking to add, if they draft one, they'll have 4. So they'll have enough to go into camp with some depth.
So, I mean, I was looking at that. Isn't Malik the number 1 quarterback? I swear I saw him on the board. Maybe I don't know which one I was looking at.
Different people have him in different spots. I think he is one, but depending on who you look at, different people may have Corral from Ole Miss as their one. Some have, and I forget who the other quarterback is that's up. I mean, I'm drawing a blank now.
Well, see, I was wondering, who do you think is going to go overall number 1? I know it's early, and we'll probably talk about this a few more times. But I was surprised whenever Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan's defensive end, like he was in the Heisman, his combine was like awesome. Like I think he's like in the shuttle and another one of them, maybe the cone drill or something. He's like on the all-time list of like fastest defensive ends. And so I'm like, oh, dude, that he has to just be the number 1 pick. And then I'm watching ESPN, one of the things, and they're like, he locked himself in as the number 2 pick. I'm like, is there a consensus number 1 that I'm like not thinking? And then I was like, is it going to be Willis? But then I'm looking at other draft boards because I'm like, I thought he was like the number 1 quarterback, but this is like a weird year where there's no number 1 guy. So they're saying that he's locked in because they're thinking that Jacksonville's going to just take an offensive lineman. And then I'm like, all right, well, if you have a generational talent at defensive end or defensive line, you would think that they would just take him overall number 1 and then work on the line the next pick. But maybe I'm wrong, because I don't see a standout offensive lineman either. It looks like it's either going to be Evan Neal from Alabama or Akeem Ekwonu, or if I'm saying that right, from NC State. And so I'm like, there's like not a consensus number 1 this year.
I thought that it was between Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon and Hutchinson at Michigan were the 2 big names that they were looking at. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they use that pick on the tight end or the center from Iowa, who's one of those ones that is speculated to go to Pittsburgh as well.
Well, see, that's where people are all up and down the board. Like, I thought Thibodeau kind of fell off the draft boards. I think going into the year, he was overall number 1. Now I think, the last I saw, it was between Hutchinson, which was like the clear number 1 defensive end, and then Trayvon Walker from Georgia that kind of played himself up with possibly Thibodeau, and then even Michigan's other defensive end, David Ojabo, just because of how he tested at the combine. Now he's moving up. And I've seen all 4 of them. Like Hutchinson's either going to be number 1 or number 2, I would think. But I've seen Ojabo all the way up in the top 5, going all the way down to like 25. Same with Thibodeau. But I haven't seen where last year you kind of just knew, oh, number one pick, right? And I feel like it's been like that for a while. Like, you knew Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Jesus Christ, Trevor Lawrence, and then you're like, all right, they're just going to keep going with the quarterback. But I'm reading like different. Is this Pro Football Focus? I don't know which site this is, but like they have like a little footnote where it's like, hey, if the team wants to go with the quarterback, they're probably going to pick Malik Willis or Kenny Pickett. And I'm like, all right, are those the top two quarterbacks? And are they just going to be floating around whichever team decides, like, hey, we're going to go with the quarterback? And if not, it looks like they're just kind of picking offensive linemen or defensive linemen. So I thought it was weird. I know it's early, but I think last year and the year before, maybe we're just kind of spoiled where the rumors are like, hey, is so-and-so going to ask for a trade? Instead of like, whatever. But I'm looking to see if Mel Kiper updated his. Is he with ESPN? This one's kind of old. He has Ekwonu at number 1, ahead of Hutchinson. And then they have Neal, the other offensive tackle. So I thought it was between those three, with not so much of them, the rest of them coming through. I'll see if ESPN has an updated one. Because did they go with someone else? What did you think? Did you see the shift where Troy Aikman and Buck are going to Monday Night Football now?
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Yeah, thought it was all right.
Yeah, I barely have the sound on, so I really don't care. But a lot of people were making a big push about it, so I was kind of like, whatever, we'll see what happens. Is McShay ESPN's big picker now? He has Hutchinson at number 1. And even stranger than what I've just said, he has Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame at number 2 before Ekwonu going to NC State. And then Neal at 4. So he's throwing just another guy in there that if he would go like number 1, I think that would be a shock. And then Trayvon Walker, which would be number. So I think like everyone has a consensus now where, I don't know if did Thibodeau not do. I know he didn't do well in the regular season when he came back and he was injured or whatever. And then he did he do the combine? I thought he did the 40 and it was pretty good, but maybe not enough to really move him up. I mean, the Steelers don't pick till when? Did they even have a first round pick? Oh, they pick at 20.
Yeah.
So a lot of mocks, even Mel Kiper here, has Willis going to them. What a quarterback room. Willis, Trubisky, Rudolph. And it's like, what are you doing? Because you also have Haskins. And isn't Willis a decent runner? Is he the only one that has running ability?
But I think when you look, with the exception of Rudolph, I think they're all in that mold of
Haskins
scrambler.
Can't run, bro. Haskins cannot run at all. I haven't seen him do anything. I haven't even seen him run out of the tunnel, bro.
Fair enough.
That's the one where it's kind of like, if they were going with that, whenever they said like him and Rudolph, I'm like, all right, well that kind of makes sense. Maybe Trubisky's a little bit more mobile than what I remember, because remember we haven't seen him play for a couple years. But McShay's mock draft is kind of crazy. He has Daxton Hill from Michigan going in his first round too. So what's he have? 3?
I think this is also the time of year where you'll start to see some of those random people get put up, because there's always someone every year that ends up going like super, super early that you're like, where the hell did that come from? And I think that's where you're starting to see like some of those guys throwing their names out now, so that when they do get picked early, you're like, oh, well, ESPN already had, like, kind of hedging themselves because they've given the people like Hutchinson and Thibodeau enough airtime early.
I think that's where the shift from like Don Brown really changed Michigan's like perspective on the draft. Like Hill, I would have thought would have been like a Jabril Peppers, where they would kind of move him around and he would have been more of a household name. But because they shifted to just kind of blitzing and sitting everyone back, like his athleticism was off the charts. So just to see McShay put in here that he's like had a great combine running a 4.3 40, it's like, all right, well, people know that he's a beast now. But just because of the way they changed the defense, they weren't really highlighting those secondary or linebacker players. It was all pretty much on, hey, we're going to let our guys get pressure, and then they're going to be so good out of the blue that they're going to be in the top. They're going to be drafted ahead of you. Like, I think that's the shock to me. It's kind of like, some of the other ones like Jordan Davis at Georgia, I thought he would be higher, but they talked about how his combine was very impressive because he ran pretty fast and had a big athleticism, but I wonder if it was just because he wasn't playing that many snaps. Because that was a knock at him going into the playoffs. Too big, needed a lot of rest. In the NFL, they're going to pay for a big recruit that's only on the field half the time, right?
Right.
So I mean, I don't know what you could do at that point, just to take that stretch. But we're going to be getting back into some of the NFL stuff in the coming weeks. We got free agency. Hopefully, we get a little bit more clarity. I think Aaron Rodgers signed his deal, right?
He did sign it.
So he was kind of waiting around. It wasn't as long as what we talked about last week. And like I said, the Kirk deal with the Jags, man, crazy, because now that's going to shift a lot of the wide receiver stuff. And let's be honest, are wide receivers even that valuable? So putting that in, I mean, if Tom Brady taught us anything, it's that he's been pretty good with every receiver that he's played with. So, like, it's not like Tom's like, hey, you know what? We need to get Randy Moss back or like whatever. It's kind of like, all right, if you guys don't want to bring him back, I'll be okay with the next guy and the next guy after that. And then like 15 guys after that. It's almost like every guy that Tom plays with turns out to be pretty good. Like maybe it's just Tom. So like if Aaron Rodgers is going to be that guy, maybe someone else will step up for him if he's able to just, stay on his feet and make a throw downfield, where I think the quarterbacks that stick in the league are able to do that. I don't think any of the Steelers quarterbacks right now can do that. So maybe they do draft. And they did say they wanted a 4-way quarterback battle. How many of them make it through the regular season yet to be seen? I would hate for them to draft Willis and then be like, yeah, we're kind of just going to go with these other 3 guys. To be honest, I wonder if Rudolph would be the one to go. Right? He's the mainstay that a lot of people are kind of like, he had a shot. If you're going to be bringing in Trubisky and you're going to bring in a draft pick that high, I don't think you keep Rudolph there. I think he's going to be a little bit too comfortable with the locker room, right? Also, Connor got the deal. So glad to see that. I wanted to bring that up with the Cardinals because he played his ass off, man. He was good this year. And I thought, honestly, I was one of the guys where I thought that whenever he left, that was going to be the last we heard of him. Le'Veon Bell-esque. But he really stepped up, and so I'm glad he got signed because he took a gamble on himself. And did we mention Juju earlier? Like, he's another one that could have gambled on himself last year, didn't. So let's wait and see. I know I talked about the Jets earlier, but he's rumored to go to the Jets, and that would be another deal where it's kind of like, oh, as a Jets fan, not that excited, But anything else you have for the NFL as I ramble on?
No.
All right. Major League Baseball back. And I'm not even going to really talk about the lockout stuff anymore, but I do want to talk about the DH, Matt. Because I was like, do I even put this on here? People do even care if we talk about Major League Baseball. I know that used to be a key component of our summer show. But I'll say this. The DH coming to the NL, okay. At least just have a level playing field. Because it's been dumb not having it. And then having like the All-Star game where it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to do the DH or whatever. And then why is the AL always winning that? Huh. Or like, hey, why are we doing this? Like, why do you guys have an extra hitter and then doing all the stuff? And then some of the stuff baffles me. Because my Braves, they trade for Olsen, like the first baseman from the A's, I think. And then the first thing everyone's like, oh, that means Freddie Freeman's gone. And to me, I'm like, wait, they have the DH now. Does Freddie Freeman want to play first base that bad? Like, and the one thing, Matt, I'm going to have to bring him up. I know you've been waiting for it, but if they would have had this 10 years ago or 20 years ago, my man Barry Bonds might still be playing. Because his bat speed was ridiculous, and I still love you, Barry. You're in my Hall of Fame. And when you're listening to this, if you want to come on the show, let me know. You can definitely call in. But I'll say this. having that DH now changes the thing, like changes the face of baseball. Because now with like the cap or whatever they ended up doing, it's like, all right, well, now they're not going to be able to sign all these guys. Like they're signing an 8-year deal or whatever they signed with Olsen. It's like, wait a second. What about bringing in just other guys and trying to stack your team? Like, is that going to change what's going on? Because going on, like if you're signing an 8-year deal at $168 million, like that's not that big of a deal, right? In terms of baseball moves. So everyone's like, yeah, they're not bringing back Freddie Freeman, or they're not doing all this other stuff. And I'm like, they probably aren't bringing him back, but now you got to be a little bit more flexible with that extra bat, right?
Yeah.
Where now I think, and I mean, you're a Cards guy, so like I think that evens the playing field for our guys. Did you see though the controversy? The reason I really wanted to bring this up, while they decide to do that, they are also thinking of doing a trial run in the minor leagues where they tie the DH to the starting pitcher. So think of how dumb this sounds. If the starting pitcher gets pulled or gets chased out before the 5th inning, they lose the DH for the rest of the game, so they only have 8 batters. Unless the pitcher is going to hit. It wasn't very clear.
That almost seems like it would help you.
I know, if it was going to 8, right?
Like, oh, I'm getting cracked, so we're going to get our better hitters. Like, almost like a mercy rule. We'll just let your better guys bat over and over.
Which almost like how good's your DH, but I think most DH guys also played like first base or whatever. So if he's a little bit better than your first baseman, I think that the regular first baseman after that just kind of goes home. And you just put the DH in, right? Because it's not like that guy just gets like a big X on him. Like, no, you were the pitcher, you're done. Like, I think they would just swap him to the first base and then pull the pitcher. And it just kind of seems weird. Like, why are you tinkering with that? What you should be tinkering with now is there's a DH, pitchers never hit, get rid of warm-ups. And if you listen to the show, you know I played baseball, so you don't need to warm up. I know these guys are super old and older than me, and I will say this, like, if you're playing in the game, you're coming in for a rest, you can go out there and throw like 1 or 2 warm-ups and you're good. No, most people don't even pay attention at the warm-ups, Matt. Like if you're in the outfield, the guys that might actually, injure themselves throwing the ball in, you don't even throw the ball 2 times. I think if they really want to speed up the game, the pitcher warms up in the bullpen because guess what? You're not hitting. So you have to go to the bullpen and you need to be ready for the inning to be over. Once it's over, start throwing your warm-up pitches. You get 2 throws off the mound or whatever. Because I think if then the outfielder can have a throw from right field to center to left, back to center, back to right, and then that guy throws it to the dugout. So everyone would basically get 2 or 3 throws, or like you could kind of skip it in a circle. So I'm trying to think how many pitches it would take to let each of the infielders throw the ball like 1 time, 1 or 2 times, and then that's it. Like you're warmed up, you're back up. Just throw the ball, make sure your arm's not dead. It's warmed up a little bit because like you can just do arm circles or whatever. Just throw in 1 or 2, and then you're good. Speed the game back up. You don't need however many. What did they get? Like 5 or something now? Like they were trying to speed it up, but with the DH gone or the DH everywhere now, there's like really no like meaningful time for that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that you're making a lot of good sense for a change. That if you want to speed that game up, then absolutely, and I think that can end up helping in terms of how long some of those spots for putting games on. Because if you have to block off 3 to 4 hours, like that's going to restrict some of the TV stuff that they're able to do because they're not. A lot of channels aren't going to be willing to commit that type of make that kind of long-term commitment.
So they're getting 5 right now. It looks like I'm saying 2. You're cutting out what? There's 9 innings. So people are like, "Oh yeah, only 3 pitches. Like that's not going to cut off that much time." But if you do that, that's 27 pitches by 9 innings, and then double that because there's 2 teams, and you're over 50 pitches. You're saving yourself if you're at home, and you can do the rest of the warm up. You can do your other warm ups from the dugout. It's not like or from the bullpen. Do it from the bullpen. And then who cares if you're in the regular dugout or whatever? That's my proposal. If they'd really want to speed up the game, 50 pitches right there. And if you get rid of 2 and give them 3, then you're down what? 30 something pitches, 40. I think it's probably more like 30, which would also speed up the game because it's not like how long does a pitch take? 15 seconds. He throws it to the catcher. They throw it back to him. He kind of walks around the mound, kicks the dirt, touches his hat, gets the tar on the ball, and then throws it. Like basically, that's the warm up routine. So it's not like they're like throwing it right back 100 miles an hour, like as fast as they can 5 times. No, they're going to be goofing around. So have that, and I think they should also do the shot clock on the warm up pitches, where you get because what did they say the shot clock was going to be? The pitch clock. Is it 15 seconds now?
That sounds right.
Because it's 14 seconds. 19 if there's runners on base, which to me, who cares if there's runners on base? Keep it the same. Just make it 15. Who decided that it's 14 and 19? That's what they were trying before. I don't know if they're actually putting that in yet, but they're saying, so like, listen to this. Their test with the pitch clock shortened games by 20 minutes on average. You combine that with my warm-up, 50 pitches less, I guarantee you're saving, 40 minutes? I would think the pitch clock, if you put it on warm-ups too, and you only gave them 2 warm-up pitches, you would shave off another 20 minutes. Guaranteed.
I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
I mean, if the guys like maybe like that's the only reason I would say to revisit it is whatever it would be, because like you want to give your fielders a chance to throw the ball. You don't want them to look like idiots where you're sitting in the bench, you don't get a warm up throw or 2, and then you get hit with a ground ball, and your first throw is Chuck Knoblauched into the bleachers. You're like, oh, well, maybe you should have warmed up a little bit. So that's why I'm saying I think if you give him 30 seconds, because the pitcher, he's not going to run out of the dugout. He's going to walk out there unless he's John Rocker. He's walking out there. So the rest of the guys, they run out there, warm up their legs. Like I said, they just work out a new warm-up routine. Everybody has the workout routine anyway. So let's go ahead and just get it set up to where you can have that time right there for you. And then you're able to get your warm-up in. It's more universal. College and even high school can get taught the same exact thing where, hey, Major League Baseball does this. I know we don't have DH because we only have 10 kids on our team. So you have to kind of just warm up on the field. That's fine. But then everyone else growing up can be taught that same routine where you're the outfielders warming up, you're throwing amongst each other. Because doesn't sometimes like another guy warms up the right fielder or whatever, so that might even speed it up more. Left and center can throw it back and forth like 5 times in 30 seconds or whatever.
Yeah.
That's my proposal. So anything else you want to add on that? Do you have any other proposals of your own in regards to baseball?
No, because the only thing that I really have considered is that I don't think you need as many games as what they have. Because I think like it's just because of tradition that they've had it start in spring, and I feel like those seasons are way too long. I think make it more meaningful.
And that's the one thing. So you're proposing getting rid of the 162 games because that was one of the big wins from this whole thing was that everyone said, well, you know what? Now they're able to keep the 162 games, so they're set. Like they're good. Like this lockout was a win. There's no like opening day we had talked about it being canceled. Now it's just kind of delayed. And I agree with you. I don't think they need that many games unless that's why I proposed, and I'm not going to go back into it. I'll bring it up like next year. I'll bring it up every year probably, and because it will never happen. But if they propose like expanding, and then some teams play less games, some teams play more games, and they did like the relegation thing that like Premier Soccer does or whatever, where they end up playing year round. But baseball, you don't need to do that. So your top teams will still play 162 games or whatever it ends up being. But I think they could easily cut it in half. I don't know what the revenue would be, but they seem very excited about getting that revenue from 162 games, and I think it would be very significant, right?
I don't know. Like,
yeah, but some of those teams, like, think of Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
No one shows up. So they make all their money because they're selling 162 game luxury boxes or whatever, like block tickets to businesses. If they're going to those businesses in a couple of years and they say, you know what, we're only going to play 82 games, and they're like, well, we have 5,000 employees. How the hell are we going to split it up to let everyone go to a game, as a business perk? And they're like, well, you have to buy more seats. And they're going to say, well, how about you just drop the price? And then they're going to kind of negotiate that, and it's going to end up being a loss. They're not going to be able to double the prices of the blocks, right?
But like,
because 82 is still a bit. I don't even know. That's probably not even half. But like 80 or 90, like that's still a ton of games to get people to go to, right? I guess it'd be 81, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, at that much, I think you're still. It's a significant amount, but I think like for someone like Pittsburgh, whether you're playing 80 or you're playing 200 games, it doesn't matter, because if you're not the way that they restructured, like all this negotiation and locking out, it's completely screwing the teams like Pittsburgh, because they're not willing to spend the money to build that competitive team to begin with. So they're a team in the league, but they're not actually a competitor. And I think if you had a shortened schedule with some of those teams that, like, if you're playing meaningful games, like trying to get yourself into a playoff hunt, you're going to fill the stands. Like they're going to be more people there. Where like you can kind of spread that out over the course of the season and be like, well, I guess I'll go to the game tonight because no one else is going to be there. I can just buy nosebleed and walk to wherever I want to sit.
And I mean, I've shown up at Pittsburgh games and just bought tickets right there. Face value, whatever. Like guys have had special prices. Like, hey, I got special prices on these. Whatever's on the ticket, if you want to buy them, you'll be right behind the home plate. And I've done that on opening day. And you know how empty it was? Pretty empty. Because people are like, you know what? I'm not going to pay for this. So much so that I've seen on Twitter trending, people petitioning to bring back McCutchen now that the new deal's in. And I'm like, why?
Well, he already signed with the Brewers, so don't worry about it.
Well, I know I was like, why are they longing for him? Like, how many people longed for Barry Bonds, Matt? Like, basically, no one that I've seen. I didn't see people petitioning to bring him back when that would have made so much of a bigger impact. But I also have another proposal for you that I think would make more sense, because, like, I'm on board with you. Too many games, whatever. I think the one thing that could easily fix it, that if you want to keep major leagues on that big of a schedule, whatever, I almost wonder if they could go ahead and take the minor league and get rid of it for the most part. Because, like, what do I talk about? They had 200 something teams. What if they went and leveraged the new NIL deal from college and they made the college teams the minor leagues? Because the sport is dying, right? Everyone knows baseball's dying. What way to get more young kids involved into a game than to also let them just show up, like you said, for practically free on college campus? If you're like at a school like, hey, we're at Villanova or somewhere where we're kind of known for basketball, we really don't have a big football program, but maybe our team kind of feeds into the Phillies. So I'm a student here. I can just go to the Villanova game, and whatever regional team is there, that's going to be the team. Where, like, hey, Michigan State, like, they have the Big Ten rivalry. I know Big Ten is really not a baseball school or baseball conference other than Michigan and maybe Indiana. But, like, you come in there, and now they're going to have guys that kind of feed into the Tigers or whatever. And I not even saying that they're going to be locked into those teams, but, like, what about the other things where it's like, hey, Tim Tebow's with, like, the Birmingham Mets. Who the hell's going to see the Birmingham Mets? No one gives a shit about the Birmingham Mets. The Birmingham Mets are not going to sell that many merchandise things unless Tim Tebow's on the team. So what if you go ahead, or he played at Syracuse too in AAA. What if Syracuse was then just the Syracuse Orange, right? And then the NIL deal works out where they're getting some TV money from Major League Baseball or whatever. So the NCAA kind of like shifts the schedule where they play from, what do they play now? From like January, or maybe February, March. I think because they even get a spring training too or whatever. Because when I played, we played in Florida. No, we played in Virginia and then in Florida. I don't know what years or what. I don't remember how it all lined up. But I will say the season was over by like May. And then if you're in the tournament, it's in like June or July. What if they kind of filled that dead space between football where the NCAA baseball tournament then just becomes in July and they add an extra month or whatever, and that's kind of just like the minor league feeding, and you get rid of all of those lower A levels and only keep like your sub you have like one sub-level professional team or minor league team or whatever where, hey, the Durham Bulls, they're the AAA team for the Rays. That's where they stash guys that are injured and let them rehab. All the other younger guys that are eating hand sandwiches that we always talk about, where it's just bread and maybe a piece of cheese, those guys now are eating like kings at a college university wherever they want to go and earn their degree. I think it would be a much better system. I think it would help revive the sport because, like I said, you're going to give them, you're adding more games to them or whatever, fine. But they can also make money on their likeness, which right now, if you're playing baseball in college, the likeness money is going to be nothing compared to what other players are getting for football or whatever. Give them a Major League Baseball tie-in. They already have a big video game. You can even tie them into that because I think NCAA baseball was a thing back when
PlayStation 2.
Yeah, it was like 20 years ago or whatever. So like that was a thing for like 2 years maybe. And then they ran into the trademarking issues or whatever. And I mean, they only had like the bigger schools. I don't even know if they had all the big schools that were available for the tournament. I can't remember. But I will say, let's say you had a college like section of that in the MLB, the show or whatever the big baseball game is, that's everywhere now. Perfect. Get rid of these minor league teams. And I think colleges are spread out enough across the country where we talked about minor league teams are mainly on the East Coast. Now you have them everywhere. And you kind of just cut all those other ones and you just have like one sub-level team. That would be my other solution. And then the minor leagues also have another World Series, which can kind of lead in, especially if you play it where, I mean, they could line it up where the All-Star game and the Home Run Derby is the start of the college playoffs or college World Series or whatever. So it kind of leads into it. Like you maybe play those other games where now the World Series is at the end of June? Just add a couple more weeks and have the College World Series begin right after the All-Star game. Because people are going to be kind of worn out, but then you're able to kind of build hype for the pennant races at the end of the season leading into the World Series then. I think that would save baseball. It would also help with branding and players coming up and just making them, like, what do we talk? We talked salaries last week or the week before? For like those minor league guys. Now they're getting a scholarship, and if it doesn't work out, like if you don't get invited to the Durham Bulls or whatever the affiliate is for the major league team, you know that your career is basically done. You're not going to be a 50-year-old guy or 40-year-old like a Julio Franco playing for the Bulls, where you're walking around Durham having like 5 world championship rings on. Like, what was that movie, Bull Durham with Kevin Costner? It's like just a journeyman catcher. Like that just wouldn't be a thing anymore. But like, who cares, right? I don't think that's romanticized enough anymore. Where players are going to be like in their 40s. I think at that point they're going to be like, you know what? I'm going to go into sales. Like I'm going to quit just taking a beating for 12 extra grand or whatever it end up being. So that's my proposal on baseball. You have anything else on it?
No.
The last thing I have is the NCAA basketball tournament, which I'll say the Big Ten again gets hyped up. My boys make it. Of course, there's controversy because Michigan was only, 17-14? And Indiana's playing right now in the play-in game. Indiana beat Michigan in the Big Ten tournament. And then they're like, you know what? We're just going to put Michigan in anyway. And I told you, I'm like, yeah, we're probably going to be in. Because like the schedule, the way it worked out was like Michigan had a top 5 toughest schedule, and they played and they won like 8 games against tournament teams. I don't remember what the exact breakdown was or something, but now you have teams like Texas A&M that played, I don't even know how many more games they played, but it ended up being like just a weird year where I saw a lot of articles being written about how Michigan didn't deserve to be because they have this magic rule where you need to win 4 more games than you have losses. But like, what if they end up playing that game against Fort Worth or whatever it was supposed to be, Fort Wayne, Indiana, I think it was. They win that game, then they're at the magic number, but COVID canceled it. Like, do you really not count them? Like, I don't understand why people, like, what would make others upset, you know? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Like, I think A&M, they ended up 23-12. They played, like, how many more games than Michigan? Right? To have 12 losses, Michigan had 14 losses. They had 2 more losses. A&M had more wins, but how many other games did they play? And if you don't have the same amount of wins against tournament teams, like I saw a couple Michigan State bloggers were like, throw out strengths of schedule, and then Michigan's like ranked 100 something. I'm like, yeah, because you're just getting everyone in that played more games then, right? If you get rid of strength of schedule, yeah, of course, if you play 30 games, you're going to have, or 40 games or whatever, you're going to have more wins than what a team that barely played over 30 is going to get, yeah. So I found it funny that they're doing it because Michigan and Michigan State have the same conference record, and I think they split the series. Like I know Michigan beat them. I don't think they beat them twice, but like that's the hill you're gonna die on when it's basically you're kind of like the exact same squad, and you're gonna say, yeah, Michigan didn't deserve to make it. Indiana had a losing record in conference. To be fair, I don't think Rutgers made it, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did. No, I guess they would have because I think the Big Ten got 9 in, right?
Rutgers was a play-in, I believe.
Oh yeah, they're the other play-in. If any team, I would think that they could be a little pissed off. They had a better conference record by 1 game. I think Michigan beat them, though. I don't know if we beat them both times. But that would be the one where it's kind of like, no, Michigan lost to them. They split then. So like that would be the one where Rutgers could have been like, yeah, why are we in the playing game against Notre Dame? But that was my big takeaway from it. I do say I saw someone posting stats about the Big Ten's futility in the tournament, where I didn't realize, Matt, they've been runner-up like every couple years. Like they've had a runner-up almost every other year. And they just haven't won the championship. Like they're like 1 in like 9 or 10 or something like that over the past 20 years. Maybe 1 in 8. Like it's been ridiculous. And I know Michigan's been there a couple times. So in terms of like that, I think they were there about the same as the ACC. But the ACC had like the exact opposite when they were there. They won it. I mean, like Duke's playing like Butler though and stuff. So maybe Michigan could catch a break, right? One of those years.
Yeah, as long as their coach isn't punching people in the face.
Well, I'm talking about previous years when we had Beeline. Now I'm like, I did see a thing where you talked about Howard slapping that guy. They're the most controversial team, Michigan, is what people were saying. I saw one of the gambling places said that Michigan, as a favorite, they weren't supposed to make the tournament. They're a favorite by 2.5 points. They're the most bet on team going into the first round games. So it's like people are like hate betting on them. Like they shouldn't even be here, but I'm going to bet on them anyway.
Well, I mean that like even as I was looking at the bracket, was like I was making notes knowing you were going to be defending your boys, and I thought with how they are down the stretch. And with their coach slapping assistants around, like, of course, Michigan will be the one that, in spite of all that nonsense, will then go on a run.
Well, I'll say this too. I don't know if you saw this, but Colorado State, they almost couldn't make it to the game, and so they were like going to petition the NCAA to push back the game, and they might have been forced to forfeit. Which, how funny would that have been if Michigan just kind of like backed into the tournament and then also got the cancellation and got that bye? Because teams got the COVID bye last year, so it would have been basically the same. I think that would have been the same protocol they followed. But I'm glad it didn't happen. Tennessee's supposed to be pretty tough for a second round game. The way the bracket shaped up, and then they'd play Ohio State or Villanova in the Sweet 16. But I think that's the main thing where Michigan gets the benefit of the doubt. They've been in the Sweet 16 like 4 years in a row. So, yeah, they've had their struggles with COVID and then coach slapping people and some injuries. Like Dickinson didn't play when they beat Ohio State. I think that's the game on the road against your rival. You give them a beatdown. That's the game that got them in the tournament. If they don't win that game, they probably don't make it, especially losing to Indiana. But they also had a 17-point lead against Indiana, and then their guys got tired, which I also account to. Remember all the COVID cancellations, they had to play more games at the end of the year compared to other teams. So how much of that was the Big Ten tournament, them just being dog tired?
Well, I think of this too, like comparatively right now to college football, where people say, "Oh, winning your conference should matter," and how many times now have we seen where whoever the SEC team is, like we had Georgia didn't win the SEC, but we're still like, oh, they have to be in. They have to be in. Like, I kind of see a similar thing where with basketball right now, there should be some level of preferential seeding towards teams that win the conference. And you have someone like Tennessee that they played competitively with the Auburns and the Arkansas and Kentuckys, and they're lower in their seeding, and they were the SEC champion. Like, when you win your tournament, I think that should give you, like, that should be that extra bump as far as where your seeding is and how that seeding is determined, so that it gives some merit to, are you your conference champion? Like, they have your regular season champion. Basically, what they're saying is win the regular season, then it doesn't matter what you do in the tournament. The only thing that's going to factor in is if you're a team that's on the bubble of, are they going to make the tournament or not, then you have to win your conference tournament.
And the one thing they also don't seem to do with basketball that they do for football is look on like past success. Because like they don't look and say like, well, the ACC has won all these tournaments by a landslide. Like, it's basically been the ACC and then to a lesser extent the Big East, followed by the other conferences having like one or two. So like there's a big gap, but it's not like this year where they're going to be like, hey, we're going to give 9 Big Ten teams. We also should give 9 ACC because, you know, they've actually won the whole thing a few times. It's like, oh, Wake Forest, basically like at Texas A&M, where I said like they had a high win total but not a lot of good wins. They kind of throw that out, and I wonder how much of it is like those pre-tournaments where like the Big Ten wins the ACC Challenge, that also bumps them and gives them a permanent strength of schedule advantage over them for the entire year then. So it's like they don't have that in football. And I mean, every time they kind of talk about it, where it's like, hey, the Big Ten should do the Pac-12 or whatever, and the SEC should do the Big 12, I think both conferences kind of balk because they're like, shit, what if we go 2-8? Or whatever it would be. Then we're never going to recover. Like, they're not going to put, just because Oklahoma beats whatever, like Auburn or someone, they're never going to put them in over like in Alabama if it comes down to it, you know, as like that last seed, like, oh, well, Georgia won the conference, but Alabama's right there. And SEC did go 8-2 in that challenge. So we better go with them, right? Like, that would exactly happen. So I think in basketball, you're seeing that happen where it's like, oh yeah, the Big Ten did awesome early in the year. They kind of beat each other up. And then I also wonder, like I've said, the conference officiating is so bad in the Big Ten. I really think that screws them, where the ACC, I'm pretty sure the ACC kind of uses the NCAA guided officiating all season. I think it helps them. It helps them in the big game, right? How would it not? Now in football, I don't know what they do, because don't they rotate refs or whatever, but in college basketball, I'm pretty sure that you can kind of opt in or use your own, and I'm pretty sure the Big Ten use their own. And so that's the one thing where I kind of wonder, when they do the strength of schedule and the net rankings and all that, it's really only focused on the year. So if you're able to have a challenge like the Big Ten ACC challenge and you win it, and that conference is all like the other top conference, then I think you're just kind of fulfilling that prophecy of like, all right, well, you have the ACC and the Big Ten. Who's going to get the most bids? They throw kind of like the Big 12 in there. But like you said, if you don't have the history or the success, the pundits can hype it up all they want, but they're not going to put them in. Like, are they really going to pick a Big 12 team over an ACC or Big 10 team? There's no way they're going to.
No.
Like, they're going to be like, oh, well, Texas is right there. I mean, they're ranked, so let's go with TCU. Oh, TCU's right there. They have 20 wins or whatever. What are we really going to do? And then they're in the tournament like this year, but like in other years, like they're not going to add that extra team. Because let's see how many of them made it. Because I know that they made a lot of them. Did Oklahoma State not make it? And I don't think Oklahoma made it either. No, neither of the Oklahoma teams made it. And like Oklahoma State, or Oklahoma's 19-15, they have Porter Moser, right? The guy that used to coach at Loyola. So he has a Final Four history. You would think that they're like, all right, they have a winning record. They didn't do good in the conference. And so because they have a lesser number of teams in that conference, are they getting penalized for that? And I think they probably did. Right? They have 5 ranked wins. So at some point it's like, hey, our conference is really tough. Too bad. We'll see you next year. That's kind of like what they did. And so I could see like them getting mad, but it's kind of like, all right, well, your conference isn't seen as that good. I mean, what, Baylor won it all. And even now this year, I've seen people picking against Baylor. So you had Kansas win the conference however many years in a row. Like, that has to hurt your perception, right? Kansas wins one national championship in like a Michigan-like streak, like 50 years, and then they also win the conference 100 times in a row. People aren't going to take that conference seriously. So I don't know what basketball can do to fix it, but the tournament, like I said, I enjoy it. I think if you're filling out your bracket, do not pick the Big Ten. Do not pick the Big Ten. All these teams are going to choke. I'm telling you now. They're all. I don't even. Normally, I'd say like, hey, pick Michigan. They're so inconsistent, and with Dickinson being like sick and not playing, it's like, all right, I don't even know what team's going to show up. And they also have guys that go 0 for 10 shooting. So like, if you go 0 for 10, to me, that's like 10 turnovers, Matt. Michigan could lose to anybody. They could also win. If I was looking at this team or this conference and I'm like, which Big Ten team is going to make the Sweet 16? Maybe Illinois. I don't trust really Wisconsin, but maybe they get there. I don't know. The rest of the teams, it's like a crapshoot. I think you're going to be back to like where I wouldn't be surprised if the last two teams standing were Michigan and Michigan State once again. It's like, oh, back to the old buddies, you know? The two teams that just hate each other, that are arguing that neither of them should have been in the tournament and that playing games don't count. That's what it will be. Although Michigan State plays Duke, which is not another upset candidate. Duke can't even win the ACC. They lose to Virginia Tech. And Coach K's last year, right? Can we talk about that? How embarrassing.
We did, but you know what? In true irony, Virginia Tech's winning championships in the ACC before Miami.
Well, I looked at the map because I'm like, there has to be a couple Florida teams in the tournament. Only Miami. I was like, only Miami from Florida? That's so weird, right?
Yeah, but I mean, the Florida State had a pile of guys throughout the season that were injured, and so when tournament time hit, they literally got gut punched.
Because like, I don't even know. Like, Miami's one of the teams where they always get hyped up sometimes, and it's like, are they going to go far? And then they never really do. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm misremembering them going far, but I don't think they ever do.
No.
Like, that's the one. If I'm looking at that side, like Auburn's there, and Auburn's pretty good, and they've had a coach with many of controversies. Maybe that would be the path for Wisconsin to take, because they play Colgate, then the winner of LSU, Iowa State, and LSU just fired their coach. So are they even going to show up? And then they're going to play what? Auburn or USC or Miami probably. Like, I could see Wisconsin just going, and then that would just be because they got a lucky seed. Iowa will lose to Richmond, probably. If I'm making a prediction. Iowa's no, like, that's a 5-12, and Iowa always chokes. And I saw Michigan give them a pretty good beating, and I know Michigan also lost to them, but that's the kind of thing where, like, I think Michigan beat them at home. I'm going to look it up real quick. Yeah, they beat him at home, and that's where I'm looking like, all right. If I'm looking for that 5-12 upset, I'm saying Richmond Spiders. I'm putting that on the show. I really only know Big Ten basketball, and so like that's going to be my thing. I could see Michigan State beating Duke, which is annoying, and Tom Izzo's like, him and Coach K are both crying on the court, hugging each other, and I'm like, why am I watching this? And I'll probably break my TV. But that's my other prediction. I also wouldn't be surprised if Michigan won. Although, like I said, that's a coin flip. So if you bet on that, that's on you. Do not tell me what you yell at me for that pick. But of the rest of the teams, I don't even know. Like the Big Ten, I don't trust them. They always choke. If you're a known choker, like Purdue losing to Yale, I wouldn't be surprised. Like if I woke up and they're like, hey, you have to bet on 1-3 seed to lose. I'm like, really? I guess it's going to be, are they all Big Ten teams, all 3 seeds? Because I'm like, that's who it's going to be. Yeah, Tennessee plays Longwood, Texas Tech plays Montana State, Purdue plays Yale, and Wisconsin plays Colgate. I would pick Purdue to lose out of those 3 teams, or 4 teams. So that's my thing. Not high on the Big Ten, but we'll see how it goes in the tournament. Anything else you have for the NCAA tournament?
I'm actually kind of interested in what the SEC does in this tournament because they're starting to like really spend for their coaches and moving people around, and they're just like, we're going to just piggyback off of our football success, and we're going to demand that we win everything in basketball as well. And if we don't, we're going to fire everyone and restart it over again.
Well, see, they've been like Big Ten light, where it seems like they've been getting a lot of teams in, highly hyped up, and then they don't make it as far as like the ACC or the Big Ten. Like they don't have the runner-up appearances, right? I'll see if I can find the actual numbers, but I'm like, I think that they're close, but I've said all along, and I know we've talked about this with Florida State and Michigan having runs, when the football money starts flowing with like NILs and stuff, let's go and let's see how far that takes you. Because once the money starts going with these NILs, it's only going to get better. So like looking at basketball, championships won. ACC had 8. This is going back to 2000. The Big East had 6. SEC had 3, which would be all Kentucky, right? Or no, Florida. I guess Florida had some. The Big 12 had 2. The AAC and the Big 10 had 1 each. The championship games, though, the Big 10 was in 8 of them. The ACC was in 10. So I said they were 1 and 8. They must be 1 and 7. The Big East was only in 6. Big 12 and 5. Which would have been Kansas losing them. SEC also had 5, but they won their 3, with Florida winning 2 of them. So it was Kentucky 1, which they should have won more, let's be honest. And Florida won 2 with Noah. Didn't they have Joakim Noah? Back in the day around the Tim Tebow years. They won back-to-backs, I think. And Horford.
Yeah.
So that was like a legit team. So let's see. The Pac-12 only had 2. So like they're not getting there yet. And if I'm looking at the years, like I wonder how far. But like the Big Ten's been there. They've been so close. And when the Big 12 makes it, like they win it. Like last year with Baylor. Like that's what the Big Ten, if half their teams won, because Michigan made it twice. If they would have won 1, Ohio State made it like once or twice, right? Wisconsin made it. Like they've been spreading it around and just not winning. Where the SEC hasn't really been spreading it around. It's really been Florida or Kentucky. Now you're looking at the bracket, like you said, Auburn's up there. Tennessee's up there. If one of these other teams steps up, LSU was there last year with Alabama, and they almost went on a run. And didn't Michigan beat both of them? Maybe I'm wrong, but I think Michigan eliminated both of them. Like that's the kind of thing where you need to hit that and take that. Like if you're going to go for that dominance, I knew Michigan beat LSU. I'm pretty sure they beat Bama too. Or no, did UCLA beat Bama? I can't remember how the bracket went because Michigan ended up losing to UCLA like on a last bucket. So that would have been like a run. Like the SEC, if you're going to tell me that they're going to spend all this money, they need to go on a magical run like UCLA last year. That's the one thing where they need a team to kind of take that run, or like Baylor, or even Texas Tech made the run where they went to the championship game and lost, right? I don't remember like an SEC team doing that other than Kentucky.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do it big, and we'll see if the money pays out. And if the Big Ten's paying attention, start throwing the money around. Just say, hey, if you really want Notre Dame that bad, start winning at all sports. Because then I think that would make them jump from the ACC, I think. If it really becomes a battle between SEC and the Big Ten where they're both getting like 9 teams in or something crazy, that's whenever you're going to see other conferences start to like lose their luster. But anything else you have for the tournament?
No.
I did have one more Big Ten thing for my final bell. The Apple TV. I should have brought this up for Major League Baseball. Because we talked about the Big Ten's like television networks, and you're talking about it with the tournament, how they're making all the money. The Big Ten had the best TV deal, and it's up for renewal. And that's where most conferences make all their money. There were rumors that Apple was going to throw a ridiculous amount of money on him, and I think a bunch of people kind of like blew it off because they're like, for what? Their archives? Because they don't do live streaming. Well, Apple had their thing today, like their conference or whatever, and they announced that they're going to be featuring Major League Baseball games on Friday nights during the regular season, 2 games on Friday. So probably like an East Coast, West Coast, like 7 and 10. So they're going to have live sports. And they're also going to have a 24/7 Major League Baseball live stream channel, kind of like the Major League Baseball Network. And they didn't say anything about the price increase. I think Apple TV is like $5 a month or whatever. And I said all along, if they did that deal and got the Big Ten everything, no bullshit like they have right now where they have Big Ten Network, they have Big Ten Plus, and then they have Big Ten Plus streaming or something like that. Like they have 3 different things. So if you were trying to watch hockey, they're only like Michigan, Notre Dame, or Michigan, Minnesota are going to be on the Big Ten Network. Most of them are going to be on Big Ten Plus, but then there's going to be the weird games like Michigan versus like Michigan Tech where they're going to be on the Big Ten Plus Plus. And you have to watch it through like a random website that probably didn't even have a password on it. So it's like, what are we doing? If everything gets thrown on Apple TV as part of like their streaming package on top of the Fox and ESPN deal, I think they're going to be making so much money, it will be ridiculous. And I hope it happens. Just because I want the streaming to be more straightforward. I would pay for Apple TV if it let me pick, because I got the same beef with ACC Network. Tried to watch NC State, Oh, let me see what let me just sign into ESPN Plus because I pay for that as part of like the Disney bundle, and that's supposed to get you the ACC Network. Games on ACC Network? No, it's not. Raycom owns it. Or whatever, that old shitty deal that Swafford did. Mm-hmm. So the ACC, you can't even watch the tournament. So I'm like, just as bad as the Big Ten. Not as stupid, because at least I knew only one app to look. But it's still like, hey, do you pay for this channel? I'm like, no, I don't. Why would I? It says very clearly on your website, ACC Network, which is a lie. So that was a lie. That's what I thought when I tried to turn it on. I'm like, hey, I'll watch the ACC tournament. I'm like, guess I won't be watching the ACC tournament, Matt. Who would have known that they promote the ACC Network? But you know what? Damn if the SEC Network wasn't on that baby, because it was. So I could have watched that, but I just didn't care. So I'm like, I don't want to watch ACC basketball. And that's another thing too. You need to get the casual people to care about your conference, which right now I think casual people are going to turn into watch ACC because of Duke, UNC. When Coach K leaves, what happens? If Duke becomes Wake Forest without him, or like hell, like remember whenever Pitt hired his disciple and everyone's like, they're going to be the next big thing. If Duke's next coach is that bad, yikes, look out for them. And then what's going to happen to the ACC? Because if they have like a run where Duke's just always losing to UNC and they're not making the tournament and not good, I think that's really going to hurt their branding when they get around for the next renewal too, because basketball's been pretty big for them. But I know we're going super long because Tom Brady came back, but anything else you have?
There's one other thing, and I saw in a stroke of pure marketing genius, Mike Tyson has his new marijuana edibles out. They're shaped as ears.
Nah.
Yes.
I have never seen that.
It was awesome.
Well, that's good. Definitely check that out. I thought I saw something about Mike Leach, but I don't have it written down. The only other thing that I had randomly was that Harbaugh hired a girl graduate assistant that played basketball at Georgetown to work with quarterbacks, Matt. So
there you go.
I wonder how that will work out, if that's going to be a push where they're opening up the positions. And I saw a lot of people being negative about it, but because like she never played football, how is she going to coach it? Basketball GA positions are much less, I would imagine. Football gets so many more positions, so if girls are going to go ahead and get their chance at a scholarship, getting into football, which has like 10 times the amount of coaches probably, is a safer bet, I would think. And as long as you played college athletics, I would think it would be pretty easy to learn. Because you have to be working towards your degree, I believe, right?
Yeah, as part of that GA package, you're going to have to be working towards your degree. Yeah,
so I don't know why people would be against it. I think it's going to be the future. And I mean, what Don Brown coached or played baseball or coached baseball first before he just randomly became the defensive coordinator at wherever he was. And then he kind of just stuck with that. Wasn't he like at one of the New England schools? So like cross sport doesn't matter. So happy for her. I hope she does well, obviously. I wonder if it will affect recruiting. Because you imagine.
Probably not.
Well, if they get promoted up, a lot of the recruiting is on like the mother side, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. That could be the new thing. Instead of having like the Clemson girls right there welcoming you on the The airstrip. Remember Lane Kiffin did that at USC? So that's all I have. Anything else you have for the show?
No, that's it.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.